What's up, friends? I am back here talking to you today about my experience in jail. Believe it or not, believe it or not, I have been to jail. And today I am going to share my personal experience of what that was like. And this was one of the most life changing moments in my life. It was one of the moments that truly opened my eyes to some of the most universal truths that absolutely have made the biggest difference in my life of overcoming adversity and rising to the challenge. So I am just going to jump into this and jump into the story. So before I do, I am going to refer back to a few of the other lives that I've done, just because it all kind of layers on top of each other. So if you're not familiar with my story yet, take some time to watch some of these videos, excuse me. So, what I learned about people pleasing when I was raped, and the one time that I married a narcissist for 9.5 months, and the truth about people pleasing, what I learned from my divorce, and what I learned about happiness when my car was stolen, and what I learned about trauma when my oldest son passed away. I know right now you're probably thinking this girl has got the most bad luck. And I like to say that I'm like this, I had like a decade of the saddest country song you could possibly imagine. So I'm actually, my name is Michelle Ellsworth, and I am a coach for specifically women who are looking to overcome obstacles and challenges and adversity, mostly codependency. I didn't realize that codependency was at the root of all of my difficulties in my life, and they are. So head over to my website at freedomfix.com and grab your free audio training there. And also, you will be submitted in to receive an email to receive a signed copy of my book when it is released. That is my 2020 mission and goal, is to get that book written. So, and before we jump into it, again, go ahead and subscribe. I am on a mission to changing the world and helping as many people overcome adversity and challenges in their life to rise from the ashes and to really overcome the life circumstances that lock you up. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and we will be feeding you so much love from this channel. So without further ado, we're going to just jump into it. So rewind, back in 2015, I married the absolute man of my dreams. I loved him to pieces. He was everything that I had ever wanted on the surface, all of the check marks checked off. And he was tall, dark, and handsome, had a great job, went to church, looked the part, looked like everything that I had ever wanted. And 9.5 months later, we were going through a divorce. And you can watch more of that video on the narcissist video that I popped up here. So we had, and I'm not going to go into that whole story because you can watch it there and it's too long to recap. So go back. It was a terribly toxic marriage, and luckily for me, it only lasted for 9.5 months. But after a decade of hell, starting from the moment when my son passed away, I went from, my son died back in 2006. He fell from a second-story window. And from there, we had 2 failed businesses, $100,000 of debt, foreclosed home. I eventually went through a divorce from my kid's dad. I was single for 5 years. In that 5 years, my car was stolen. I was sexually assaulted and raped. I remarried a pathological lying narcissist. And while I was married to him, we were at the Sundance Film Festival in Park City, Utah. And we met this couple who was from London, and they were getting married. And I'm a photographer. You can see all of the pictures on my back wall here. I'm a photographer, and my entire dream, my whole life, was to be a destination wedding photographer, to get paid to do what I love, see the world that I love, and get paid to do it. So this had been a dream of mine. I had never done a destination wedding, and we meet this couple. They're two lawyers from the UK, and they invite me to come out and photograph their wedding. And I was like, heck yes. And it just so happened that this wedding fell on my 1 year anniversary. And 6 weeks before 6 weeks before I was supposed to go out and shoot this wedding on May 1st, 2015, my second husband kicks me out of the house and says, I don't want to be married anymore. You're out. We're done. And I ended up moving out of the house that day. So ex-husband kicks me out. I move out of the house from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. I'm out of the house by the time he gets home. And the only place I had to go was my parents' house. They live in Cabo half the year, and they had a vacant home. And their utilities had been turned off, and it was winter outside. It was in March, and it was snowing. So it was very cold, and we had spent all day moving. I was emotionally just a complete wreck. I had it. I was at the end of my rope of a decade of hell. And honestly, I thought that I had reached the point in my life when God was going to just open up the doors of blessings, and he was just going to pour upon me abundantly because of the hell of the decade before that got me there. And I really thought that when I was asked to go out to London to photograph this wedding, that it was going to be this beautiful and amazing experience of the doors are opening for me and my world is becoming my my playground or whatever. And I really thought it was just this gigantic blessing. Well, I wasn't supposed to go to London until May, and in March was when my ex-husband kicked me out of the house. So my dog had broken his back the day before my second husband kicked me out. And my dog was on medication for his back for the pain. And so we move, and the night that we move, it's 11 o'clock at night, and I'm putting my kids to bed. My kids are 8 and 10 at the time. And my son looks at me and he goes, Mom, what's that noise? And I look at him and I'm like, no. And this was a house that I grew up in. And so I was very familiar with this house and this specific problem. And I ran downstairs only to see a pipe broken because they hadn't winterized it properly. And it was spewing water into my parents' basement. Now, my parents had just remodeled their home. The carpet had never been walked on before, and they were going to sell it the day they got home. So I run downstairs, and we have flooded the crap out of this basement. I'm like, no. And I go and I throw down the water main, and I run out to assess the damage, and my kids come downstairs, and my dog had just gone outside to go to the bathroom. And when a dog can't squat and is on medication that gives him diarrhea, what happens? He comes in with diarrhea just down his butt. And I have no water to clean his butt because I have just had to turn off the water main for the mess of the basement. I am at my wit's end. I have given up all hope. I am done adulting at this point. It's I've gone through 2 failed marriages. I cannot keep life together. I am an ultra failure. I can't make life work for me. And that night, I remember my son and my daughter, they turned on some music. We ended up calling a neighbor, and they came over and we shop vacced it. It was cold because we didn't have any utilities. We didn't have any heater, because the utilities had been turned off because my parents weren't living there. And so it was just the absolute worst night. And it really, really tested me to the limit of having a desire to keep on trying in my life. I had reached a point where I was like, this, my life's never going to get better. My life is never going to get better. And I had already struggled for a long, long time with suicidal thoughts. And I remember just going to bed at 2:00 in the morning, and I was just laying over myself, and my son and my daughter, they came and they hovered over me, and I just wept, and I just said, I can't do this. I can't adult. And then I apologized to him. I'm like, I'm sorry I'm letting you down as a mom. And it was just this moment of complete failure as a human, as a mom, as a wife, as everything. And I went to bed that night, and I woke up in the morning, and I was like, I am still going to London, and I am still photographing this wedding. And it was like almost a little bit of vengeance, where I was like, I'm going to have the best life, and this guy is going to be sad that he missed it, and he's going to be sad that he kicked me out of the house, and that he wanted a divorce. And it was kind of like, I'm going to show him. Truthfully, like, I had a little bit of a vengeance, like, attitude. Well, I asked my mom, she couldn't go with me, my sister, my best friends. I asked all the people if they could go with me to London, and nobody could. And I had never traveled alone, and I had never traveled internationally. And in my head, I was like, okay, I am going to take my life by the horns, and I am going to create the life that I want. And my life is not going to do me anymore. I am going to start doing my life, and I'm going to start creating what I want. And I just had resolve within myself that starting right now, my past is my past, and I am only going to have good experiences going forward, and things are going to start working for me going forward. So that day, I booked my plane ticket to go to London, even though inside of me something was saying, are you sure you should go? Like, you've never traveled alone, you've never traveled internationally, and you're kind of an emotional hot mess because you're going through a divorce. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this is exactly what I need. Maybe this is exactly the break that I need, is to have this experience. And I truthfully kind of had this thought that maybe it would be like my Eat, Pray, Love experience, where I would go and I would travel and I would find myself, and I would find the answers that I was looking for in a glorified way. And so I booked my plane ticket that day, and booked it for my arrival to be in London on my 1-year anniversary day on May 1st. And I fly out there, I get off the plane, and as I get off the plane, the customs agent, he says, where's your paperwork? No. He says, what are you here for? And I said, I'm here to photograph a wedding. And he said, oh, who's your couple? And I told him. And at this point, I'm thinking, why is he asking me so many questions? And he goes, where are they getting married? And I tell him, and he said, when are they getting married? And I tell him, and I'm honestly thinking, like, is there a problem? Like, why is he asking me all these questions? And he says, where's your paperwork? And I hand him my passport and the paperwork that they gave me on the airplane. And he said, no, where is your visa? And I was like, no. And he said, I need to see your visa. And I said, I don't have a visa. And I said, I looked that up, and you only need a visa if you're coming to live in the country for 3 months and stay. And I'm not doing that. I'm only shooting a wedding, and I'm only going to be here for a day, like shooting that wedding. And he says, we're going to have to ask you some more questions. So at this point, they take away all of my belongings. They take away my camera, my computer, my phone, all of my suitcases, everything. And except they left me with my blanket and the book that I brought, which the book that I brought was The Power of Positive Thinking. And I literally had not even started reading that book. And I remember just looking at the cover and just being like, okay, I can only guess as to what is in this book. And I'm just going to think really positive that I am getting in and that everything's going to be okay and that they're going to let me into their country. So I literally spent 8 hours in detention thinking positively that I was going to be let into their country and that everything was going to work out just fine. Well, when they took me back to detention, the lady, she says to me, she takes my handprints, my fingerprints, and my picture, my mugshot. And she says, you know how I know you're innocent? And I said, how? And she goes, because you smiled when I took your picture. And I was like, that's what I do for a living. Is I take people's pictures and I get them to smile. Like, that's what you're supposed to do when you get your picture taken, is smile. I thought that was funny. And at that point I was like, innocent of what? Like, what crime have I committed? And the customs agent comes back after like 8 hours, and both of my clients, the bride and the groom, they're both lawyers, and they both have friends in embassies all over Europe. Well, they could not pull any strings for me at this point. And I had to call them. They gave me my one call, and I called the groom, and I was like, I am in detention and I don't know if I'm going to make it. And he was actually so great. He was like, don't worry about it. It's going to make a great story someday. And he's like, we'll figure it out if you don't get in. So the detention officer comes in and he says, we have determined that you are not a authentic or genuine visitor in our country. We are going to send you back to the United States first thing in the morning. And I was like, no, you cannot. And at this point, I'm begging him, and I'm like, please, like, I am going through a divorce, and I just need a break, and I just need a trip. Like, I will leave my camera here with you. I will fly to France. I will go to, like, just let me fly somewhere else. Just let me stay. I'm telling him all my woes, and he just looks at me, and he's like, you're going to be going back to the United States first thing in the morning. And then he says, but we can't let you stay in the airport. We're going to transfer you to our nearest facility. And I'm thinking in my head, like, Motel 8. I'm thinking, just like some motel that's close by. It's not until we go outside and I get into a vehicle with no door handles, steel seats, and bulletproof glass that I realize that they are taking me to jail. And I am like, you've got to be joking. And you know what? Honestly, if it had only been this, I think I would have been okay. But because there had been a decade of shiat, it was a breaker for me. I just broke. Something inside of me just crumbled. Because this was supposed to be like my moment. This was supposed to be like the doors opening for me. This was supposed to be the moment of redemption of all the hell that I had lived through. And here we are driving in, and there's the three and the steel door that opens, and then you drive in, and then the steel door shuts behind you, and they turn the engine off, and somebody comes in and checks everybody inside the car, 3 layers deep of that, with the barbed wire fences. I mean, it was the whole shebang. Barred doors, barred windows. And I'm just like a little girl from Utah. And so we get in. I've been pat down at this point like probably 20 times in 20 hours. And every single person who I have to go through, it's like another pat down. And it was funny because I remember being a little bit revengeful because they're like, you have to give us everything. And I had some Lululemon pants on, and I put like $200 in there, and I was like, I'm going to put it in there and see if they find it. They're not going to find this, just to see if I could slip it by, just to see. And I did. They never found it. And so when I get to jail and they bring me in, they have to do a full health screening. And I'm finally like, it's 3:00 in the morning. And I'm like, can I just get my shower stuff? Can I just go take a shower? I just seriously need to be alone for a second, because I had been so like followed and watched for 8 hours, and I just needed to like check out and take a shower. You know how you're like disgusting after you travel. I had traveled across the pond in an 11-hour airplane ride, and I was disgusting, and I just wanted to shower and be alone. And they were like, we're gonna have to go through your toiletries. And I was like, what? So they go through my toiletries and they start pulling out my tampons, and they're like, what are these? And I'm like, I don't want to have to describe this to you. Like, do you not know what tampons are? And then they're like, they pull out my razor for, whatever. And I'm like, it's just a freaking razor. I just want to freaking shave my legs. I was so mortified and so incredibly violated, like my privacy. And I did not think that I deserved this at all. So finally I was like, forget it. I don't need a shower. Just freaking show me where my room is. And they're like, well, you get one phone call. So I call my mom and I tell her, and my mom on the other line, she was like, what? They did what to you? She is screaming. She's like, you're in jail. And she was just hysterical. And she says to me, Michelle, whatever you do, you find a Bible. You find a Bible. So I'm a Jesus girl. Always have been, always will be. I go to church. I'm a God girl. I love God. And this is a God story. So hopefully if you're watching, you're God people, because this ends in such a beautiful way with my Maker. So I find a Bible, and I'm going to read actually what I read. I literally just flipped open the Bible and read the first and only verse that I flipped open to. There was 2 verses actually, and it was in Jude, and it was Jude chapter 8, and it says, and I think it was verse 20 and 21, and it says, but ye beloved, building up yourselves on your most holy faith, praying in the Holy Ghost. Keep yourselves in the love of God, looking for the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ unto eternal life. And in that moment, I realized that I had built myself up on all of the wrong things, that I had built my self-esteem around who loved me, on who approved of me, on who told me I was pretty enough, smart enough, skinny enough, funny enough, spiritual enough, whatever enough. And I had based my self-esteem on who approved of me. And I never based my self-esteem, I never built myself up in God. I'd always built myself up in people. And the thing is, when you build yourself up in anything other than God, God is your only unchangeable source to build yourself up in. If you build yourself up in anything else, that is changeable. If you build your self-esteem around being somebody's spouse, guess what? They can kick you out of the house, and you can be out of the house 8 hours later. If you build yourself up in the fact that you're a parent, or for me, the mother of the most beautiful and amazing child to have ever walked this earth, guess what? He can die, and that's what happened to me. And then when you build yourself up on those things and then those things crumble, what happens is you crumble with that. Your identity crumbles when your life circumstances crumble. You can build yourself up in the identity, or build yourself up on your career, or whatever it might be. And overnight, you could be a dentist and your right arm gets chopped off and now you can't do dental work anymore. The only firm place to build yourself up is in God, because he is the only unchangeable foundation in the world. Period. That principle was driven home so strong that night when I was in that cell all alone. I had never, ever, ever relied on God. I had always relied on the flesh of man. I had always relied on a friend, family member, man. And it was the first time where everything had been stripped away from me, and the only person that I had to rely on was God himself. And as I was there sitting in that jail cell room, it was so disgusting. I had 3 pillows that were about this thick stacked on each other. So like this thick of a pillow with 3 pillows. They were probably like incredibly bug infested. It was really, really gross. And the covers were hardly enough to stay warm. And the food was barfingly disgusting. I couldn't choke down these like microwave dinners that they brought in. I didn't even eat. It was so gross. And as I was sitting there, I had a come to Jesus moment, and I was done. I was done in every way. I was done spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally. I was done with a desire to live my life. I was done trying to keep on making a life work that just wasn't working after a decade of hell. And I got this prompting in my head after I read that scripture. And the prompting said, it doesn't matter who loves you and leaves you. It doesn't matter who thinks you're a saint and who thinks you're a criminal. All that matters is that God knows who you are, where you're going, and how to get you there. And I realized in that moment that these people in London thought that I was a criminal, that my ex-husband thought that I was whatever, crazy, and then there's other people who think that I'm amazing, and that I have all of these different opinions of people, or I have all of these people's opinions of me that I've always worried over and concerned myself over whether or not people approved of me. And in that moment, it was this clarification that it doesn't matter who thinks anything of you. All that matters is that you know what God thinks of you. And his opinion is the only opinion that really truly matters. So I actually made this cute little pop up here just for you to take in there. It doesn't matter who loves you or leaves you. It doesn't matter who thinks you are a saint and who thinks you're a criminal. All that matters is that God knows who you are, where you are going, and how to get you there. That was one of the most powerful life lessons that I learned in that moment. And the next one was when I was screaming at God, and I was throwing a full-on adult temper tantrum, and I was like, I am so mad. I have found all of the silver linings. I want my silver platter. I am done. I am done. I'm done. And I am screaming in my heart and in my head, and I am just pounding my fist into the ground, and I am just done. And I crawled into bed, and as I laid my head on those bug-infested pillows, I remember muttering the words, "But if you need me to, I still will." And those 3 words, "I still will," have been the most life-changing words, because it is a commitment and a surrender. And I realized that the truth is, we are all put here to learn what God needs us to learn. We are all here to go through exactly what God needs us to go through, to learn the lessons that He needs us to learn to become more like Him. And that there is nothing that we don't go through anything more than we absolutely have to for God to teach us what we need to learn. As soon as we learn the lesson, we don't need to go through those lessons anymore. And maybe I'm just a really slow learner, and God, that's why I needed to go through so much hell, is because I wasn't learning the lesson. I don't know. So, the power of I still will, that is a commitment to God that no matter what we go through, we are willing to go through it because we trust in Him and in His knowing of who we are and what we need to learn. And when we surrender, when we give control to God and we say, I don't know why I need to go through this, but I trust that I do, that's actually when we gain control. When we give control back to God, that is when we gain control of our life, is because now when we finally submit and surrender to God and we say, I will still go through whatever it is that you need me to go through, there is no longer anything to be afraid of. Instead of living in fear that something next or terrible, or that something else is going to happen terrible, you can relinquish that fear, because even if you do go through something else that's terrible, which, by the way, it's a good thing I made that commitment, because I came home, met the man of my dreams, married him, and 2 years later he bankrupted me. And again, like, mind-blowing, ridiculous trial. But if I hadn't made that commitment that I still will, that I will go through whatever it is that you need me to go through, I don't know if I could have gotten through that bankruptcy and all of the events that surrounded it. But because I had made that commitment, I was able to say, there has to be a learning lesson in there. And there was. And I'm going to share that story with you shortly, sometime in the next week or so. So make sure to subscribe to my channel, because that's another big heavy hitter, and one that drove some really important lessons home for me. So I'm going to be talking about that. But and as I finished out the night there, and the detention officer takes me to the airline the next day. I was traveling Delta, and when I get back onto the plane, he says, if this woman acts up, then we give you the right to detain her. She's been detained. And here's her detained paperwork. So I get on, and this lady, she comes up to me and she goes, you look familiar. Were you just on the plane yesterday when we dropped you off? And I'm like, yes. She's like, why are you back so soon? And I told her the story. And as soon as the doors were closed, she comes to me and she says, come follow me. Come up to the front of the plane. And she proceeds to give me a first class ticket, a first class seat. And she goes, shh, don't tell Delta this, because I could lose my job over it. But we felt like we wanted to do something kind for you. And I traveled all the way home from London. It was 11 hours. There was three-course meals, appetizers, main course, and dessert 3 different times. I'm like snuggled in this gigantic down comforter blanket and these pillows. And I'm like, my mind is blown how vastly different I can be treated from being in jail, sleeping on a cot with 3 pillows. Oh, I wanted to show you too. There it is. And there's the windows that I got to look out. So there was my home for 24 hours. Anyway, and as I was driving home, or excuse me, as I was flying home, I was journaling the whole thing because I didn't want to forget any details. And the thought came into my mind that if we could just change how we see challenges in our life and just flip a few letters in our vocabulary, then we can change our adversity and let it become our university. Our tribulations are just our education, and our trials are our tests. Realizing that everything we go through, all challenges, all obstacles, all they are is an education. What course are you enrolled in right now to learn more about the nature of God? Are you enrolled in forgiveness? Are you enrolled in perseverance? Are you enrolled in faith? Are you enrolled in compassion and empathy? Are you enrolled in learning and understanding and growth? And I truly believe that every experience that we go through can be absolutely used for our good if we let it. And the way we let all things work for our good is by learning from it. Because have you ever met anybody who's gone to school and received an education say, I'm mad I did that. That was stupid. Like, whenever we receive an education, it betters us. It creates a level up for us. So as long as we're learning from our experience, if nothing else comes from it other than us learning, then it still benefits us. And then the last thing that I'm gonna talk about real quick is I was actually at church, and for many, many, many years, God was silent when I needed him the most. And especially after my son died, during the most heart-wrenching, painful time I have ever gone through, I remember feeling like, where is God when I need him the most? Why is he not here? Why has he gone silent? And I was at church, and this lady, she said, when you take a test, the teacher has to go silent. Because if the teacher is telling you the answers while you're taking the test, then the teacher won't know if you know the answers or not. And I realized in that moment that sometimes God is quiet, and it's to test what we actually know and what we actually believe. And I loved that so much. So I am going to leave it here. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I would love to have you here. I am going to be diving into so much more. This was a fun story to tell. Luckily, it's behind me and hopefully never to happen again. So, oh, I do have to finish this though. This is like a key point I have to finish, is that they gave me first class. I came home, and I was at this point a single mom, and my couple wanted a reimbursement for their wedding. And so I ended up spending $3,000 to go sleep in jail for 24 hours in London and come home. And I had messaged Delta and told them the experience that I had had. And I just said to Delta, I just said, listen, I know it's not your fault. This is just the circumstance that I found myself in. I don't know if there's anything that you can do. And I was just like, just seeing if maybe they would give me a credit of some sort so that I wouldn't just completely be out that $1,400 plane ticket. And they responded to me 3 weeks later, and they said, we've determined to give you a full refund. Not even a credit, but a full refund. And you guys know how airlines are like the biggest sticklers in the world of refunds and helping people like with canceled flights and things. I was dumbfounded. And they gave me a full refund. So there were blessings wrapped up in that crazy experience, but that is what I'm going to leave you guys with today. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on the rest of the stories, which there are more to come. I'll be talking about dating, manifesting the man of my dreams, co-parenting, blending families, bankruptcy, forgiveness, and finally creating a life of abundance. All right, friends, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time. Bye.